children reach about age 5 or 6, they begin to wonder why some people look different than they do. They worship God differently or celebrate different holidays. ABC News correspondent Linsey Davis is helping families teach their children about diversity with a new book. Take a look.
As a reporter, Linsey Davis covers major news stories for ABC World News, Nightline, and Good Morning America. She's also the author of the best-selling children's book, The World is Awake, a celebration of everyday blessings, a book she wrote with her then 3-year-old son Aiden in mind. Today, Linsey is back with a second children's book, inspired once again by Aiden, who's now 5. This time, the topic is diversity. It's called One Big Heart, a celebration of being more alike than different.
Well, Linsey Davis is back with us now. Welcome to the 700 Club.
Thanks
I
for
just
having
have
me.
to hold this up because it's so fun. I mean, this is just a beautifully done book. You know, in the book you write all about diversity. Boy, do we live in a time where we need a message on that. Is that what compelled you to address?
100% was just the climate in our country and raising my son during this time and just wanting to make sure that there were going to be certain values that he was going to grow up with. And people will say, oh, it's anecdotal that our country is divided. But when you look at hate crimes are rising year after year in the last 3 years. And I just wanted to get back to what's wholesome and good and make sure my son is filled with that. I think what's interesting is children already inherently feel this way. They're not worried about somebody's background or skin color or religious beliefs. They just want to know, what do we have in common? What kind of toys do you like? Will you be my friend? And when my son talks about a new friend, he doesn't bring up anything about their background. He just says, well, you know, they like Legos too.
Yes.
Can they come over?
In the first part of the book, you talk about the various ways that we're different. And then in the second part of the book, you talk about all the wonderful ways that we're the same. What made you decide to do it in that order?
Sure. Well, I think that it's important because kids notice differences. A lot of times people will say, oh, kids are colorblind and they don't notice, but they 100% do. They just don't assign a value to, oh, what's good or bad. And so I thought it was important to be upfront and say, yes, we have different skin color and different hair and features and likes and dislikes and beliefs, but then let's turn the page to what unites us and the greater good and the bigger issues that we have in common. And that God gave us all this one special part. He gave us a big heart, and that's the most important part because that's where the love starts.
You talked for just a second there about assigning a value. As you said, kids are going to notice the differences. I mean, they'd have to be blind not to.
Right.
However, what are some of the things that we do as grown-ups, whether we're parents, grandparents, teachers, you know, church leaders, that assign values to these scenarios that are negative?
I think we end up with a them versus us attitude quite often. Just for people, we decide that people who are like us and believe like us, that it's better for us to be in those groups. I think that that's just kind of like a faction that we end up doing. And people say, you know, you have to be taught to hate. I think that it's not just that simple. I think quite often it's what's caught. What the children observe in your behavior, in your body language, and who you associate with, right? And so I think that that's what's so important is, you know, for me, making sure that my son is in a diverse area, whether it's at church or in school system. And I think that other parents need to be aware of that same thing, that it's so important for children to have that exposure to people who are different from who they are.
Understand the value
exactly
of that. You say that it's really important for us to address diversity in a child's life at a young age.
Right.
Why?
Well, I think, first of all, this is kind of a prime example of the student becomes the teacher. We, as adults, could learn from children and their open hearts and their willingness to love and be such eager and passionate, right? But I think that when you don't, establish early on, then their hearts are hardened and they grow up to become adults who are, not willing to embrace diversity and not willing to be accepting and open and loving. I think that that's just so important. I think that when we're talking about, a lot of the hate crimes and stuff that are happening now, I think that comes in large part where you just don't know. We quite often fear what we don't know. So if you've never been exposed to somebody with a different belief system or background from you, then you might decide like, oh, they're different. You know, I don't like that group of people. But maybe if you had at an early age that friend who you'd say, well, you know, no, they're not all bad people. You know, I remember my friend Johnny.
Yes. I think also just the pronouns that you talk about using, the we, they, puts a dividing wall.
Right. Exactly.
So, you know, I find because we have a very diverse family, that with my children, if I talk about God's perspective on it, his enjoyment of diversity and uniqueness and the way he created things, it just is it's such an uplifting conversation that we have. What do you do for children when they've been exposed to something that's not been positive at school or in the marketplace? How do we counter that?
Well, I think that it's important that we talk about it, right? I think that that's first. And I love what you said to your granddaughter about God loves variety. And I think that that's the messaging. I think that a lot of times children, just as important it is that children see themselves reflected in the books, I think it's important that they see kids who don't look like them. And I think that that helps them to be more compassionate people. And so when they have experienced something that they're being chastised or in some way they feel like they're separate from a different group, I think that we have to talk to them about, you know, some people haven't been exposed to people who don't look like them, and some people are afraid of that, or however it is. But I think that the most important thing is that you address it head on.
Well, one of the things I loved so much about your book is that it just brings forth the concept of value in every single person. And what an opportunity we have as parents and grandparents and teachers and pastors to instill that in our children. The artwork in the book is so fun. Your message is so beautifully put together in it. It's called One Big Heart. It's available wherever it's a celebration of being more alike than different, and you can find it wherever books are sold. Linsey, thank you. Another great children's book.
Thank you,
Are you going to do
Sarah.
another one?
Yes, I'm working on one right now as we speak. Yes.
Okay. Well, let us know.
I'll make sure you get a copy.